only thing that matters on that picture. So the reason I'm bringing all of this up is because when we start talking about lateral thinking and we start talking about thinking on a different level than most people, Jesus came up with thoughts that would bother people. They would have one way of thinking of things, and Jesus would say to them, let me challenge you to look at that a different way. Let me just challenge you to look at it a different way. He was using what everybody says the word parable. And so there were a lot of biblical scholars that just didn't like what Jesus was doing. They didn't call them parables. They called them metaphors. And a metaphor uses the same similar type of thing, familiar thing to somebody, and something that's real common to everybody else is something that Jesus would use to explain a thought that sometimes people, when they know more than you, they will speak over your head just to make themselves feel more intelligent. Jesus knew who he was. He didn't have to think he was higher than anybody. So the metaphor would be used to help you to see something that you've never really seen before while looking at the exact same thing that everybody else is seeing. So Jesus uses parables, is his word, to get you to see something that you probably didn't want to ever see before. But instead of confronting you head on, which is what caused a lot of them a problem, Jesus would because when you see somebody approaching you head on, you build a resistance to it. If I'm going to tell you something and you know I'm getting ready to tell you, what you're doing right now is working on your answer. That's why sometimes in a room, 2 or 3 people will hold their hands up and ask the same question. I'm not really listening to you, I'm waiting on my question. Somebody answered your question 5 minutes ago, but you were so focused on your question that you are not listening to anyone else. So Jesus knew that when he would talk to people directly, they would build a resistance up to him. They get ready for him. They come back at him with something. And that's what keeps some people, a lot of us, people don't want to talk to us because we're thinking about how we can think faster or outthink them. And it's, as clever as it seems, it doesn't really make you a very good conversationalist. So a parable doesn't move above your head. A parable, when Jesus would use it, will go from side to side. Is everybody following me now? Are you with me? So right now I'm still thinking lateral here. Remember we're talking lateral moves, but I got to get you to see the lateral view first. And I realized maybe I took you a little too fast last week. So you got to learn to see it from another side. Look at it this way. You're not in the same place. You're just looking at it down here. So when I started understanding lateral thinking, it was a little different for me. It was a little different for me because I always kind of grew up in a church where everything was kind of the way it was, and that's the way it is, and don't worry about it, and people are going to be who they are, and you've got to always probably be a greater in the Lord than somebody else, and so we always had a problem growing up with people never wanting to come to the church, to our churches and whatever church I was going to, because we just didn't understand that some people didn't have to climb over a wall. Some people's testimony that some people didn't smoke dope and beat up the women and shoot kids. And see, some people just we always think the testimony got to be something like that. Tell what God done for you. Well, he ain't done nothing for me. I never fell out of a plane. I never raped anybody. I never murdered anybody. God ain't done nothing for me. I never been on dope. I never been in the streets. Because sometimes we think that the only thing that we can talk about that God has done is going over a wall. Sometimes some people can say, it just took me 9 years to get my degree because I had to go through a gate. So the key to understanding a parable, which is a parable that we just used here, the story that we use even here in Mark the 9th chapter, the key to understanding it is to look for the surprise. If you're taking notes now that won't be something anybody won't probably hear outside of here. The key is to look for the surprise. And what Jesus would do was talk to them and wait for their eyebrows to go up, because he knew that he found something that they didn't think was going to happen. So he's telling his side of the story. He's giving people a different way to look at it so that they would go, And it really bothers you because, see, when you know you've got something figured out and someone says, okay, what you see and what you think is right, but you don't see the other side of that same story. You're trying to make this thing so bad that it has to go over a wall. Jesus said, I am the door. I'm not the wall. Y'all get this? Behold, I stand at the door. I'm knocking. I'm treating you like the door. I'm not the wall. Quit trying to make it look like it's impossible to get to me. All you got to do is come through the gate and push it. It's not even locked. Satan has been telling you that it's locked, and you've been trying to pick the lock instead of push the gate. Don't pick it, push it. Don't pick it, push it. It's already unlocked. Just walk in. And so he would start to tell them stories. And when he would say something, he would reverse it so that the bad person in the story could sometimes look good. Now let me give you an example. In the parable of the prodigal son, I started talking a little bit about it last week. This prodigal son is in the book of Luke, and this kid runs away from home with his daddy's money. And so Jesus tells about the boy coming back home, and he's all uptight about being gone so long. And so when he's telling this story, they're expecting Jesus to say, boy, but when he got home, his daddy must have wore him out. Because that's what's supposed to happen when you take your daddy's money and go out and spend it in the world and clubbing and doing all the stuff that boy was doing. And his daddy's going to lay him out, and his dad's going to knock him out. He's going to tell him a thing or two, and he's going to say, get out of my sight. I don't know you. I don't like you anymore. You're dead to me. You have gone out there, and you have wasted the family's name, and you have messed the family up. You're no longer part of this family. You chose your bed. Now go sleep in it. And that's what they expected Jesus to do when he was telling this story. So they were all cool with Jesus. Remember now, these people kept inviting Jesus to speak to them. And they wanted Jesus to speak to him because he had influence. He had a lot of followers. You missed that, didn't you? You missed that, didn't you? See, some people will only want you to follow them because you have a lot of followers. And once they start to follow you or want you to follow them, they will understand if they ever listen to you, wait a minute, he's different. Pay attention to the word followers. Followers, following. Don't get it twisted. So they wanted him, and you know, and the cool part is some people were following Jesus, and Jesus didn't know they were following him. They were just looking to see who else was following him and what they would. They would never identify themselves. But they would still get affected because they were following Jesus, because faith cometh by. And sometimes you didn't know how they got hooked up, you didn't know who they were connected to. They just spent most of their days trying to figure out who's following who. Sound like Jesus invented social media. How do you get 5,000 people to come and have fish snacks unless somebody's tweeting? Somebody got a blast going out somewhere. So maybe somebody showed up at the 5,000 trying to figure out how did she know? And how did he know? And I didn't even know that they knew him. And I didn't know that if they knew him that their church would even be here, because they don't go here. Well, he's a Jew, he's a Gentile, he's a Samaritan. All of them are out here because folk get hungry, they just get hungry. But who's telling who? And so now Jesus is there because he's realizing all of a sudden I've got people to talk to, so I've got to talk to everybody. I cannot gear my message toward one race or one culture because everybody needs to be changed. And ain't nothing happy about this, is it? And so that's what the father was supposed to do. The father in the story is supposed to go, boy, bust your head in, you've been gone so long. But Jesus chooses another door. He doesn't have the father to go through the usual door of vengeance. No, the father moves laterally in Jesus' story. Because we're all waiting on the father to bust the boy's head in. Tell somebody, say, Jesus makes the father move laterally. You know, and even in church, it's all right if you talk out here to me, amen, but it bothers some of you to just talk laterally, doesn't it? Sometimes when you come to church, do you notice you decide who you're going to sit next to because of who you don't really want to talk to? Just in case he says, tell your neighbor. You do it, it's on surveillance. Some of you will be right next to a good spot and you realize, oh, she going to sit here. And then you go, because just in case the preacher might say, reach over and tell your neighbor God is good. I ain't telling her nothing. Reach over and tell the brother he's a good God. I ain't telling him nothing. Because for some of you, to fellowship during church is climbing a wall. And so you would rather lose your space on getting inside because you don't want to climb that wall when all God is trying to get you to do is look laterally and speak where you're going. And so he chooses to make the Father go laterally. Don't cuss him out like everybody think you're going to do. Open your arms and welcome him in. Well, now all of a sudden everybody's going, wait just a minute. This boy is opening a door. This father's opening a door called grace and forgiveness. See, most of us, when somebody does us wrong, we think we've got to go over that wall of kick your behind. Jesus said, no, go through the gate of grace and forgiveness. Because remember, you just said a few minutes ago, you are very valuable, but you're very flawed. You want forgiveness, but you don't want to give it to anybody else. You want to be understood, but you don't want to understand. Now you're getting quiet, church. That was the first thing we said now. You're very valuable. You're valuable enough to die for. But you have enough flaws to be forgotten. The Father went through the door of grace and forgiveness, and he opened it up for his son. Well, he was telling a story, he's telling a parable, remember, because he's trying to tell people that that's how God is. He wants to let us in through a gate of forgiveness. So that was one parable. That's lateral thinking, and I told you you're going to fall out and be shouting all over the floor. So get back up and get back in your seats. Okay, that's one story. You get it? Lateral thinking. In other words, sometimes you think you're different and you're not. You're predictable. And what bothers you is that Satan puts you back in the same mode of being predictable the way you've been. Because we don't seek God for lateral thinking. We seek our five senses for wall climbing. I know what I saw, I know what I know what I think, I know what I'm going to do. But what if Jesus says, today, make a different move? Instead of kicking your son in the head for spending $5, give him $10 and see how he's going to spend it. Maybe he'll give you the $5 back. Well, I'm not giving him $5 back, he spent $10. What if God took everything that you took from him? Right today. Tomorrow you wake up, he says, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to do like those other people. I'm going to do like the payday loan people. I'm going to take your house during the night. I'm going to take your car during the night. I'm going to shut your cell phone off during the night. As a matter of fact, your nails going to fall off, your tattoos going to melt, your teeth going to fall. Everything that you spent my tithes on to make you comfortable, I'm going to take. But no, he says, I'm opening the door for you of grace and forgiveness. And I wish y'all understood what I was trying to go with this message. Yeah, your boy should have got a spanking, but maybe today you can bless him. Repeat after me. I'm very valuable, but I'm deeply flawed. Say this, I'm very expensive, but I buy cheap things. I'm just trying to get us here. I can't even start teaching us because we're not, some of you want me to challenge your intelligence and you're not on my level. Because I'm thinking spiritual, you're thinking natural, you're smarter than me. And my wisdom is now about to match your smarts. And I don't get my wisdom from books. I get my wisdom from God. So I'm not even in the contest. I'm not even in the contest. And so it's hard to fight when you're fighting by yourself. Because I'm not going to fight with you. I just got to. Faith cometh by. The next story that Jesus told was the story of this Good Samaritan. Now again, he's talking about going through a gate and not over a wall. Are we there? Is that making any sense yet? He's just telling us how to laterally think. Why is he telling us that? Because I'm trying to get you prepared for lateral thinking. You're going to get prepared for it. It's going to happen. Success is going to happen to you, and you're going to be so busy, wrapped up in your blessings, that you really won't have time to see where somebody else is blessed. I promise you. If some people don't tell you what's going on, you won't even notice it. But here's another thing. If you notice it too much, you're not thanking God for yours.